Welcome to the 2020 Whistlestop Winter Haven Virtual Hobnob. Welcome. My name is Katie Worthington Decker, and I am the President and CEO of the Greater Winter Haven Chamber of Commerce, and it is my privilege to be your MC for this video series. Whistlestop Winter Haven is traditionally an in-person event where members of the public can come together to shake hands and get to know the candidates that are on the ballot through one-on-one conversations. But as we all know, 2020 is a year to adapt, so we have pivoted this event to an online series of Zoom interviews. We certainly hope you take the time to listen to each of the candidates and learn a little bit more about them and what they stand for and while they're running. We have invited every candidate on the ballot in Polk County to participate, and we want to thank those candidates who did decide to do it. Full disclosure, the Winter Haven Chamber does not endorse any individual candidates, but we do believe in an informed electorate. So we hope that you find these videos useful as you are getting ready to fill out your ballot. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors for this video series. Our presenting sponsor is Citizens Bank and Trust. Our Meet the Candidates sponsor is Spectrum. Our additional sponsors include Citrus Connection, the Hemingway Group Realtors with Crosby & Associates, John Wood Realty, and the campaign of Sam Killebrew, District 41. As I mentioned, there are two important dates for you to remember coming up in this election. On August 18th is the primary. And while there are the traditional Democrat and Republican primary races, there are also some very important local races that will be decided during that election. These include school board, county commission, supervisor of election, and the Lake Region Lakes Management District. And of course, the second date to remember is the general election that will be held nationally on November 3rd. We hope that you will find this video series useful, and please encourage your family and friends that are eligible to vote to do so. It is our greatest right as American citizens. Enjoy. Kathy, thank you so much for joining us today. We are excited to have you with us for the 2020 Whistlestop Winter Haven Virtual Hobnob. And because your campaign was so wonderful to participate in this event, you purchased a virtual booth, and the Florida Division of Elections does require that you make the following statement.
Yes, this is a political advertisement paid for and approved by Kathy Lewis, Democrat, for State Senate District 20.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kathy. And we will jump right into the meat of today's interview. So first and foremost, take this opportunity to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Again, I'm Kathy Lewis, and I'm a candidate for State Senate in District 20. District 20 covers parts of Pasco, Hillsborough, and Polk counties. And I'll start with my childhood. As a child, I was told from a very early age and through my early adulthood that I was in a pretty much impossible or unwinnable situation. And even part of the leadership in our party has even mentioned that we were in an unwinnable situation, that Senate District 20 was an unwinnable seat. But they don't know me. You see, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I grew up in an unwinnable situation. I was surrounded by poverty, gun violence, illegal drug use, learned helplessness, unwinnable at every turn. And every day there was an active shooter outside as a child and in my young adulthood. I had a cousin who was shot with a stray bullet, shot in the chest, miraculously survived. Another cousin's 4-year-old daughter shot in the head with a stray bullet, miraculously survived, but has a debilitating brain injury. One of my best friends at 15 was shot with a shotgun accidentally at the age of 15. My aunt was murdered in a home invasion, brutally murdered, shot in the head. And even my own mother was shot by a stray bullet when I was age 10, but miraculously survived. She's 86 right now. So when we hear about gun violence, and the reason why I'm talking about this because of the events of last weekend, you know, when you hear about gun violence in poor neighborhoods, it's not just, you know, bad people killing bad people. None of my family members were criminals. We were just poor. We were just poor. And that is the nature of living poor often sometimes in neighborhoods like that. But on a better, more positive note, my father was the first African-American firefighter, one of the first. It was a group of 9 in Baltimore, Maryland. My mother was a homemaker, and I scratched and clawed my way out of the hood, if you will, and graduated from Johns Hopkins University. I've been married for 28 years to my husband, who is a surgeon. My husband also graduated from Johns Hopkins. He has a bachelor's, and this is interesting. He has a bachelor's, a master's, an MD, a PhD, and an MBA. And my husband is an African-American man. I like to say that because it's unusual to see an African-American with all these degrees sometimes. So we value education. I have 2 daughters. Our oldest daughter also graduated from Johns Hopkins. She is a Fulbright scholar, was living in Korea. She speaks Korean fluently. And our youngest daughter, our sweet youngest daughter, is the daughter that has a disability, which is why I decided to run for office. So I'm not telling you all this very personal stuff just for the fun of it. I'm talking about this personal stuff because escaping from poverty really leaves you with a specific set of skills. I know how to solve problems. I know how to win against insurmountable odds. I know how to get things done in a fearless, caring way. And running for office is very personal for me.
Well, I think you kind of touched on this, or it can be derived from your first answer for your very personal story. And thank you for sharing that. It really, I think, helps give context. But so kind of summarize that in why you're running for this specific office.
Absolutely.
Why running for District 20?
Yes, this is our second time around. We ran in 2018 for this very same reason that I'm about to explain, and we did win our primary in 2018. But since this is our second time around, it was just a year and a half ago, we were delighted to run again. How we ended up here is I have a daughter, as I mentioned before, with a disability. Once she's 23, once she turned 18, she qualified for certain state benefits. And we were waiting for months, for 4 months, to hear from the state what these benefits were. And we needed a specific amount of benefits because of her disability. So I was waiting and waiting for 4 months, and nothing happened. We didn't hear. Every time we checked with people, they said it's in review, it's in review. So one particularly difficult night, 3:30 in the morning, my daughter finally went to sleep, and I said, I can't take this anymore. So I wrote an email to 75 people. I started with the Health and Human Services Secretary all the way down to anybody I could think of, lawyers, everybody. I sent that at 3:30 a.m. At 9 a.m., Dr. Price's office called me. He's since been fired, but he called at 9 a.m. I almost fainted. That never happens. And that person told me at 10 a.m. to call the administrator for disabilities for the entire country. I called at 10 a.m. She answered the phone. I almost fainted again. And she told me in a very clearly angry voice that she had already spoken to the people in Florida. And if I did not hear anything in 2 days, to call her back. That was a Thursday. By Tuesday, our daughter's case was completely funded and ready to go. That's a whole nother nightmare with the benefits. However, and I guess most people, when I tell this story, they're thrilled, and it is a good outcome, but it made me incredibly angry that I had to do that I had to write to 75 people, including the Health and Human Services Secretary, to get the people in Florida to do their jobs. So I decided to run for office. Now, this, many of us are not directly affected by a person or family member with a disability, but this is a healthcare issue. and it applies to everyone. We're just one accident away, one traumatic brain injury away from being in this situation. We have parents that are aging that will need care, and no one, and I mean no one, is doing anything about this. No one. So we will, and that's how I ended up here. So it's very personal for me, and I will fight for, I couldn't sleep at night. I was worried about families. What are they doing? How are they managing? Are they thinking to write to the secretary, Health and Human Services secretary? No. I mean, it bothered me so deeply that that's why I decided to run last time, and this is the same reason this time.
And so thinking about going into this upcoming legislative session, which of course would be in 2021, what would you consider your top 3 priorities? I mean, in terms of the bills you would file, and kind of a side note question, has that changed at all with the COVID crisis that we're going through right now?
Well, of course, with the COVID, it hasn't changed much. I mean, we still have these other problems. Even though we have the COVID pandemic, the other problems didn't just disappear. But the COVID has sort of caused them to be exponentially worse. So the number one thing would have to be healthcare, some sort of Medicaid expansion. As we can see that people have lost their jobs, which of course means they've lost their healthcare, which of course they've lost their job because of a disease. It's just a nightmare, circle of a nightmare for a lot of people. And now it has happened to people who never even thought they could be in this sort of category. So the number one thing would be to have effective, caring leadership first. And I would hope that I would do that. I'm sure I can do that. And to increase the living wage for people so they have the ability to actually live, and make sure that they have health care. So that would be my top priority in the healthcare thing. The second part would, of course, be education. As I said, our family education is what sort of helped me get out of the horrific situation I was in as a child. It was education. Education is very important. We have to pay our teachers more. I have some ideas about, I want to look at these sort of standardized tests we spend, all the money we spend on giving these tests to children, and I think they should go to teacher salaries, things like that. And then, of course, the environment. And the environment, of course, is part, COVID-19 is part of the environmental problems that we're having. It's not just our natural resources. We have to look at, how we manage food, what we are allowed to eat, and how we go about our day-to-day lives and how it affects the environment. So those would be my 3 top things.
So District 20, for those viewers that may not be aware, District 20 includes a part of Polk County, not
Yes.
all of Polk County. And then what other areas does District 20 include?
Yes, it's Hillsborough, Pasco, and Polk. And I don't know the exact numbers. I sort of don't have them in front of me, but last time they were around 52%. Hillsborough, say 30-some%, Pasco, and another 14, 18% Polk County. That's about how it is.
So
yes.
In the role as a representative of District 20, you have priorities from various areas.
Yes.
So you have priorities for some more urban areas, priorities more rural areas. As someone who would be representing a part of Polk County, what do you perceive as the community's top priorities that we would be asking you to look at as our
Absolutely. Yes, and it goes back to the COVID-19. I mean, we have a serious problem here with this pandemic. It's a serious problem, and the ripple effects of how it's affecting jobs is just compounding things. So that sort of applies to everyone in Polk County, of course, is included in that. So we would, again, need to sort of increase salaries to a living wage. And we have to begin to recognize that as business owners, we are part of the problem of poverty and people being unable to live because we can't or won't or can't afford to pay people a living wage so that they can manage their lives. So that would be sort of the piece I would work on for Polk, but of course it applies to everyone because we're in a sort of a strange sort of time now. And if anyone is saying that they have the answers to everything, well, they don't, because this is a very different time right now with this pandemic. So I think if we can keep everyone and get everyone back healthy and able to work and able to have jobs that pay them enough to live, then I think we're on the right track. I mean, thinking about, of course, we need roads, we need education, we need lots of things, and of course we have to work on those, but we have to make sure everyone's healthy and able to work before we can do any of that. So that would be a priority there.
And so why should voters choose you over your opponent?
Yes, it's you know, it's a very strange time right now, and I know my opponent is a very nice man. I met him the last time when we were campaigning. I met him, and I'm sure he has some good ideas as well. However, we have clear differences. I mean, businesses sort of have to come around. I mean, if we are still, we're sort of stuck in an antiquated view about how to manage our community as it relates to business and jobs. I'm different from him because again, running for a very personal reason, and I'm sure other candidates would say that, but the entire reason why I ended up in politics because of something affected our family directly, and it caused me nightmares as it relates to the outer, my outer broader community. So I think I'm extremely different in that area. My reason, my absolute passion for others, my caring about others, and I have an absolute fearlessness because of my childhood. I'm unafraid of tackling difficult situations. I'm not a sort of cookie cutter sort of politician. I'm not one at all. When I'm asked a question, I answer it directly. Chips fall, but I have to be myself and I have to tell everyone what I plan to do and what I think is best. And hopefully if the community disagrees, then we'll work together to figure out what is best for everyone. And I have this all or nothing kind of everyone has to work together viewpoint. I'm not just looking at the particular people who are voting for us, say, I want to help everyone. And disability rights, and I'm one of the only candidates with disability rights and healthcare as a top priority. And it's a top priority, as I explained, for a very personal reason. So I think that makes me very different from my opponent. And I hope the voters will see that and recognize it as something worthwhile.
Very good. Is there anything else before we conclude that you would want the voters of Polk County to know about you?
Well, I am a very, very driven person. I'm determined to get things done. And I have a very strong sense of what is right. And I think we all do. I think people talk about right and wrong and what's the right thing to do. I think deep down, we all know what's the right thing to do. I think we get clouded by outside forces, what looks best, what feels best, and if we're going to stay in a particular group of people. I don't have that problem. As I said, when we first ran in this seat, everyone was telling me I was ridiculous, I was foolish, and even within our own party, that no one would vote for me but my husband and children. And that didn't bother me. That was fine. I ran last time with no hope of winning, but just to talk about this story. And of course, we came, within a very good margin that no one ever expected. And also we won a primary. So I hope the voters will consider me and us as a group of us, as I am a very passionate and honest person. So please vote for us.
Well, Kathy, thank you so much for taking the leap of faith into running for office. It is certainly one of the most admirable yet very challenging things that someone can do for their fellow citizen. And so we want to thank you for taking the risk and running for office, and then also for agreeing to participate in this interview process for Whistlestop Winter Haven. It means a lot to the Winter Haven Chamber and the Polk County community.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.